Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. And today's random review comes from a modern film, believe it or not, 2017's The Captain. This is directed by Robert Schwenteke, which I've probably mispronounced, who bizarrely... He started his career by writing and directing a serial killer film called Tattoo, and since then he's pretty much been a Hollywood director for hire who's directed The Time Traveler's Wife, Flight Plan, Red, and Divergent and Allegiant. So not particularly a wonderful track record, but The Captain is in German with subtitles in English, strangely enough, so it's a bit of a strange departure from Schwenteke's career path, but it's a really interesting and dark film. It's based on a true story. The lead character did exist. Now, obviously with films based on a true story, you don't know how much artistic license was kind of put into it. People have pointed out that the timeline that the film set in kind of jumps about a bit. You know, some of the medals on the captain's uniform are perhaps erroneous, but that's people who are into military history. But the character did exist. There are records of certainly some of the things that went on portrayed in the film. So the film is set... Well, the first intertitle, it's set a couple of weeks before the end of the war, World War II. And it's set in Germany at this time where there was lots of soldiers deserting, lots of soldiers that had kind of resorted to pillaging for food and thievery. So the first shots of the film are a German soldier being chased through the countryside. It's shot in winter, being chased by a carload of other German soldiers. We hear a trumpet on the soundtrack and you think it's just a random trumpet on chase music, but it's actually a trumpet being played by one of the soldiers as he is being chased for what we assume is perhaps desertion. He manages to lose his the people chasing him in the forest, and he hides, and he comes across a car stuck in a hedgerow which has a captain's uniform. So therefore he puts it on, and so begins his journey as an imposter as he goes through the last days of the Second World War. Should say the film is in colour, but on the DVD there is a black and white version, which originally the director wanted it to be released in black and white. Very much like Frank Darabont's The Mist in 2007, he originally wanted it released in black and white, but the studio said no, but there's a black and white version of The Mist on the Blu-ray and it's the same with this DVD. This is available on Region 1 Blu-ray, but it's actually quite expensive. You can pick up the Region 2 DVD for like £3 on Amazon or eBay, so it's pretty cheap. The film itself is beautifully shot. Again, it's almost like a completely different director from all his Hollywood kind of mainstream stuff. It is a film that is for strong stomachs. I mean, it's only a 15, but I would certainly say it's a hard 15. There is a kind of vein of black gallows humour that goes through it, but it's certainly not a comedy. It's beautifully shot. The black and white, I mean, both versions are beautiful, but the black and white's especially wonderful looking. So he gets the uniform. The first soldier that he meets, because we see him kind of rehearsing what a captain might say and trying to be in charge, and then he comes across this soldier who's got separated from his unit, so he takes him under his wing. The soldier becomes his driver. They go to an inn, they go to another farm where they meet more kind of ragtag soldiers that have been separated from their unit but could easily be deserters. But obviously he's under false pretenses, so again he builds his unit that way until he comes kind of face to face with a unit who's kind of looking for deserters and actually wants identification. So he ends up bluffing his way into a detention camp, which did exist, where it's full of German soldiers who have deserted or been caught thieving or raping or pillaging. So they were put in these detention camps awaiting court-martial, awaiting the courts. And again, it's at the tail end of the war. Germany kind of knew they were losing, but they wanted to find people to blame. They wanted, again, it's a period that's not really shown that much in films, as far as I know. And it is Germans killing other Germans. So the officers in charge of the camp are kind of getting frustrated that they have to feed these criminals, and they have to await court-martial, and it has to be done by the judiciary, and it has to be done by the letter of the law. Whereas this fake captain just comes in and decides there's quicker ways of getting rid of people. And it's the classic story. As he gains power and people seem to believe his stories, he just becomes more powerful, and he pretty much gets his soldiers and the other officers to essentially commit atrocities on German soldiers. Again, it's dark stuff. The first soldier that he meets, who's an older soldier, he's kind of acts as the audience, so he's originally kind of goes along with them, and they're not having fun, but they're getting like food and they're getting treated differently from their usual grunt soldier. But then as the power starts going to the captain's head, you can see it in the older soldier that he's just distancing himself and being appalled at the levels that this guy is sinking to. There's a pretty hardcore execution scene that he then gets the older soldier to go into the death pit to make sure they're all dead. Again, it's a hard 15. I would personally make it an 18, but then I technically would always go up the way in certificates. It's not a fun film, but again, it's the classic imposter story of the tension between will he get discovered, will he get found out. But I'm obviously not gonna tell you that. You'll just have to watch the film. It is quite a long film, even though it doesn't really seem that long. It's a bit over 2 hours. But again, you end up just getting hooked, and just you obviously want to see how it turns out. And then when you find out what happens at the end, it comes up on the screen of actually what happened to the real imposter. It's quite eye-opening. Again, because it's based on a true story, we know how these things are. We've all seen enough films based on true stories to know that sometimes they're embellished a little bit. But it is a fairly interesting story. And in the post-credits, Schwenke kind of reminds us that fascism and the right wing aren't a thing of the past, in a nice post-credit sequence that initially is kind of funny, but then you kind of get the point of what he's trying to say. So a bizarre film when you consider the rest of the director's work, which is just completely mainstream Hollywood. I mean, things like Red are perfectly enjoyable nonsense, but this seems to be a completely different filmmaker that did it. I think it's, he wrote it, unlike the Hollywood mainstream films that he's done. So it's obviously a kind of more personal story to him. Again, it's about a period at the end of World War II that we don't really see too much from the German point of view. And it's beautifully shot. It is a beautifully shot film. But it does have fairly strong moments of violence in it, so it's maybe not for everybody. But yeah, certainly for £2 or £3 in the UK, it's worth picking up and giving it a go. So thanks very much for watching this random review. Please let me know in the comments below if you've seen The Captain and what you think of it. And hopefully we'll see you again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films.